Welcome to week 3, good people. Here there be dragons. Maybe even a frog prince. Since we've gotten off to a strong start talking about some of the most fundamental questions of children's literature, what is children's literature? What are the qualities of children's literature? What are our assumptions of children's literature? Now we're going to focus on the specific genre of fantasy. Now that's a very broad term, I know, but for our purposes, we're defining fantasy as a kind of literature that includes fantastical, imaginative elements as a key feature of the storytelling. This can include stories as ancient as the folktales and fairy tales that have been adapted all over the world, such as Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast and quite a few others. It also includes modern novels such as The Wind in the Willows, The Wizard of Oz, Peter Pan, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, The Phantom Tollbooth, and among hundreds and hundreds of other titles, of course it includes Harry Potter. You didn't think I was going to forget this one, did you? As you talk about the stories that you can recite by heart this week in the discussion, I want you to think about what specifically makes these stories memorable. Is it the structure of the stories? Is it the characters? Is it the content? Is it the larger universal themes such as love conquers all or good triumphs over evil? What makes these stories memorable? Here's something else to consider as you're getting into the discussion this week. When it comes to fantasy for children, we're usually caught in a dilemma. We want stories for children to capture their imagination, to give them something to question and explore. At the same time, we want stories that ground them in reality. So, as you've considered children's fantasy, here are some things to consider. What are good examples of children's fantasy? What are bad examples of children's fantasy? What makes them good or bad? What do you think is the real purpose of writing a fantasy story over a realistic one? When does fantasy go too far? When you consider these questions, I'll also leave you with this statement by G.K. Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton was an English writer, wordsmith, and a great thinker of the 20th century who wrote on all kinds of topics, from history, literary criticism, economics, philosophy, theology, the list goes on. When talking about fantasy, this is what he had to say in defense of fantasy. I'm paraphrasing here. Fairy tales are not responsible for making children afraid, nor do they give children the idea of ugliness or evil in the world. Those things exist already. Fairy tales aren't important because they tell us dragons exist or witches exist or bad things exist. Fairy tales, he says, are important because they tell us bad things can be defeated. I'll leave that thought with you and some of those other questions as well. Don't forget to post 10 times this week, and also to pose your own questions, to respond to other people's questions, and or to bring in your own web resource on children's fantasy. I'll be looking forward to hearing what you have to say about fantasy. And don't forget, watch out for dragons.